Hi, my name is BJ Fatum. I'm on the board for Billy DeFrank, and I'm here with Jax, and we're going to talk about non-binary. And Jax, you identify as non-binary, is that correct?
Yes, I identify as non-binary. I identify as agender, which is within the non-binary spectrum. I find for myself, I um, I don't know. People talk a lot about feeling their gender, and I don't know that I feel any particular gender.
So what does it mean? So tell us a little bit more. Define for to you what is non-binary and what is agender?
So agender is to be without gender. Um, Non-binary for me is an umbrella term for anybody that does not see themselves within the gender binary, either male or female. um, that's not to say that those things can't exist in tandem with non-binary. Like I know some a non-binary woman, for instance. That's what she calls herself. uh, but yeah, uh, it
So
is
that
not uh, so strictly defined. It's outside of strictly male and female
okay. And
genders.
and everybody seems to have their own perception or definition of non-binary,
Yeah,
it sounds like.
yes, it's very individualized. I've found, and you will get a different answer from every non-binary person you talk to.
That's what I'm finding. And again, and we were talking about this a little earlier, some don't even consider non-binary within the trans community. And how do you feel about that?
If someone themselves is non-binary and considers themselves distinct from trans, that is their business. However, I worry a little bit about gatekeeping. It's not my place to tell anybody else that they're not part of the trans community if they consider themselves non-binary. So I kind of stay out of it and let people make their own decisions. But I don't want to um I don't like the gatekeeping though.
Yeah. And so the South Bay Trans Day of Visibility that we do every year
Hmm.
always includes non-binary within the trans community.
Right.
And we always have. And you've actually assisted and helped us with some workshops in the past on that.
Yes, I have.
Um, when did you realize you're non-binary or agender? What was it that prompted you to be able to start realizing that?
I think I I think a part of me always knew. I didn't have words for it until I about 6 or 7 years ago, though. Um, I'd heard the term genderqueer in around the year 2000. I was doing a lot of Rocky Horror Picture Show around that time. I was part of a shadow cast, but I didn't really that didn't really make any sense to me. I didn't know what that was. I didn't engage with that term at all at the time. Um, but uh, non-binary, I saw it come up a lot online on forums like Twitter, and yeah, I began reading what other people's experience with non-binary was, and realized that that fit me as well. Um,
So did you at some point come out to certain people as non-binary and who and how?
I think the first person I probably came out to as non-binary was my ex, and I don't really remember that interaction. Um, but I came out as non-binary first on Facebook, and my Facebook feed is pretty progressive. I am not out to my parents. I don't even know how to have that conversation with them. I don't know that I want to have that conversation with them, um, and they are not on my Facebook. So, um, yeah, no, I mean, I I've known I was queer since probably age 11. So the non-binary identity was just like, oh, okay, well, here's something new.
And that brings up another issue. I mean, we're talking about gender as opposed to sexuality. And a lot of people confuse that.
They do. And they can be so uh, interrelated for somebody. Um, I'm finding I'm not using the same terms I used to identify with now. I'm calling myself queer rather than gay, for instance. And I'm
Hmm.
finding that there's maybe more nuance to my own attraction to other people because I realize that there are other people that can look a lot like me and also be non binary. And that doesn't, I don't know, gay felt exclusive to me as a term to describe myself with.
And that's interesting because what became a what was a vulgar term years ago, decades ago, has now been
Right.
embraced by the LGBTQ community and seems to be more useful as far as embracing it as more encompassing as to the what you really want to say when you say queer.
And we are finding more terms all the time. I think I saw one called Flex, which may more accurately describe my sexuality as opposed. Um, but uh, I don't know.
We're coming up with different terms every day,
Yes,
and it'll keep
every day
evolving.
it's hard to keep up.
Yes. And that brings up the other part. I also am getting from various different individuals in the non that are under the non-binary umbrella the use of pronouns. How do you feel about that? What is your position on it?
Well, that you should respect somebody's pronouns if they tell you what they are. If they're earnest about it and they're not trying to make fun of non-binary people, um, you should just respect what those pronouns are. Um, I think asking what somebody's pronouns are can be a little bit fraught sometimes because you don't want to put someone in a position where they're not ready to out themselves in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think they should just be respected as best as you can. Uh, that said, there are a lot of different pronoun sets outside of he, she, and they sets, and those can be difficult to learn. I know.
And the English language doesn't lend itself always to using the non-binary pronouns.
I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think people want it to be true, but say you're talking about the person that came over to repair your dishwasher. You're talking about them showing up tomorrow at noon, for instance. You don't know what their gender is. They could
True.
be male, they could be female. You don't know what their gender is. You're only talking about one person, though. So, is it a matter of English grammar? I don't know. I think that's a cop out argument that
And
people
and
make.
and it's so easy just to use a person's name.
Right.
So, what's your preference? And I'm hearing from everybody I've been interviewing, I'm getting a different uh, response.
Ooh.
Or do you have one?
I they and them
Okay.
is my preference. I would prefer if people didn't use he and him for me, but I know that that's just something I have to deal with in my daily life anyway.
So
I
with
can't
that,
I
and
can't completely escape my appearance.
well, that, but and I think the general public, until they're until people are more aware of a non-binary population, and it starts to grow, and people start to be more aware of pronouns.
Right.
I think you're right. And then there are some that insist and very aggressively insist use my pronouns, and others that I don't really care.
And,
Where do you feel
well,
you are?
and I have to say honestly, I really like Z, Zim, and Zir pronouns, but I feel like I'm gonna have such an uphill fight trying to get people to use those pronouns that I personally am just not willing to have that fight. I
Hmm.
have enough problems in my life. I can't.
Yeah.
That just seems like a bridge too far for me to fight everyone on.
Yeah.
So I don't. I choose not to.
And I'm seeing everybody has their own individual opinion regarding that, whether or not they want to really push it or when you want to. And I think, and maybe it's the person's intent. I mean, sometimes it's just innocent. Other times it could be very intentional.
Well, I've had a lot of doctor's appointments recently. I'm not. I'm not uh, going to try to get all of my doctors to use they and them for me, especially if it's a single conversation
Hmm.
or if I'm only talking to them the one time. I'm just not. It's just not worth it to me.
But if you're going to be engaged in a more relationship with somebody like friends and things like that, you would prefer
Right.
that they consistently use the appropriate pronouns.
Right. Yes.
So, so what recommendations or what advice would you give people out there that may be questioning, am I non-binary, or are know that they're non-binary and they don't know what to do now?
Who find a trusted friend. Do some of. There are a lot of really. I, how do I say this? I don't know. I just found out for myself, and I, I don't know that I have a lot of non-binary friends. I've spent a lot of time online just trying to figure out what non-binary was first, and then what non-binary was for me. Um, One of the things that I think we sometimes have trouble with within the community is trying to define what non-binary is for other people. Like sometimes I get the impression that people think that non-binary is women light,
Hmm.
and that's not it. So they might include women and non-binary people, but they don't want people assigned male at birth showing up to their event, or
True.
people who are more masculine showing up to their non-binary inclusive event, and that's not what non-binary is.
Interesting. So even within the non-binary community, there's a little bit of prejudice and bias.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Or people who think they're being inclusive that maybe not part of the non-binary community, but want to exclude a portion of us because they don't really know what non-binary is.
Right. And of all places, the LGBTQ community should be the most inclusive community of all.
Right. Right.
So, any parting words that you would like to
Parting
tell
words.
anybody?
Ooh, even when it's hard, live your truth. I mean, obviously, if it's safe to do so, but live your truth. I know that can be really hard. I know that can be excruciatingly hard. Um, and if you can't, come to me and you can talk to me about it.
Great. Jax, thank you so much. I really
Uh,
appreciate your input. And anybody that's questioning or think or know they're non binary, please reach out. And as Jack said, live your truth.